The Xbox One X was released earlier last month and has been dubbed as the world's most powerful console. But is it possible to build a PC for $500 that can compete against this 4K gaming capable console? Stay tuned. Hello guys and welcome to Easy PC. Before we start, I want to point it out that the following PC build is composed of a mix of used and new parts to achieve the optimum price to performance ratio. This is also because prices of certain components like DDR4 memory have gone up in price. Now this build we have here is inspired by the Minesweeper build made by Ozzy from Ostox Hardware with a few tweaks. Link to his video is provided in the description box below. Starting with the processor, we have the Xeon E3-1230V1. This is a product of Intel's Sandy Bridge architecture and performs very similar to an i7-2600. The only difference between the two being that the Xeon is clocked 200 MHz slower than the i7 and it also lacks the integrated GPU. For those who don't know, you must be wondering if a 4-core CPU can compete with its 8-core counterpart found in the One X. This CPU will handily beat the excavator architecture based CPU found in the One X every day. The One X CPU bottlenecks its GPU on many occasions, but this CPU will certainly not. This also works with a cheap mainstream LGA 1155 motherboard, and these motherboards generally cost around $30. As we all know, RAM prices have skyrocketed, especially DDR4 RAM, which are at an all-time high. We can relatively get away cheaply with used DDR3 RAM. An 8GB kit can usually start from anywhere around $30 to $40. A 1TB hard drive usually costs around $30 in eBay. This is basically the same that you find in the One X. Just keep in mind while buying, opt for the 7200 RPM drive and not the 5400 RPM one. Moving on, next we have the PSU. I have chosen this Seasonic PSU for my build. This is a fully modular PSU with an 80 plus bronze rating. You can also choose the CX550 from Corsair as an alternative. For the case, I have gone with the Thermaltake Versa H21. This is a very basic case but should do the job just fine. If you have the money, you can invest in a much better case. Now for the most important part of this build, which will determine whether this PC can compete against the 4K console or even outperform it, the GPU. The RX 580 8GB is chosen as the GPU for this build. It's based on the Polaris 10 architecture just like the Xbox One X graphics chip. Another thing is that this graphics card is around 6 teraflops, which is equivalent to that of the Xbox One X. The only difference between the two GPUs, at least on paper, is that the RX 580 is clocked a bit faster, whereas the One X GPU has 4 extra compute units, which is 40 compared to the 36 series found in the AMD card. The RX 580 can be had for around $280 to $290. You can also go with the GTX 1060 6GB version, but I feel the RX 580 edges out slightly in performance with its extra 2GB VRAM buffer. As I have mentioned before, the CPU in this system won't be bottlenecking the GPU, and thus the relative performance is measured for this PC is via the GPU front. If you still feel that you are not getting the results, upgrading the RAM to 16GB will solve the issue. The total cost of the build amounts to $535 after adding the GPU. For comparison between the two systems, 5 games are tested and benchmark data is provided for each game. I have taken data from DigitalFoundry's videos for the One X, and for the 580, I have taken data from Guru3D and TechSpot.com. Links to all the sources are provided in the description below. Let's start off with Destiny 2. This game runs at a native 4K resolution on the console, with a pretty much locked 30 FPS throughout. Graphical quality wise, it mostly runs at a high preset when compared with PC settings. Comparing frame rates, the RX 580 runs this at 40 frames average with a 1% low of 32. A major advantage while gaming in a PC is that you can adjust the settings and resolution to achieve a desired frame rate. Lowering the resolution, the RX 580 averages at 74 frames per second with 59 FPS minimum at 1440p resolution. Lowering the settings further will yield even more frames. Next we have the latest release in the Call of Duty franchise, Call of Duty World War II. This game runs very smoothly in the console with a locked 60 FPS experience. To achieve this, however, resolution is compromised, and the game renders this in a dynamic 4K resolution. In comparison, the RX 580 averages around 44 frames per second at native 4K resolution, since dynamic resolution scalability is not possible in PC. At 1440p resolution, the game averages at 78 frames per second in ultra settings. To maintain the 60 FPS target, the One X, however, does not compromise on the quality front. The quality preset is set to almost ultra when comparing with the PC settings. Moving on to Hitman, two presets are found on the console version of the game: high quality and high frame rate. The game renders differently on the two modes. When selecting the high quality mode, the game is played at a native 4K resolution, running at an almost locked 30 FPS. Whilst with high frame rate mode, the resolution dials back to 1440p in pursuit of attaining 60 frames per second. The game does maintain 60 FPS average, but it isn't completely locked. The RX 580 averages 37 FPS in 4K and 67 in 1440p. The graphical preset of the high quality mode is set to ultra, and in high frame rate mode it is set to high, as assessed by DigitalFoundry. The next game on the list is Quantum Break, a popular game which is graphically quite intensive. Unlike the previous game, this one unfortunately does not provide a high frame rate mode. Thus the game only runs at around 30 FPS. The game is rendered in a 1440p upscaled 4K resolution. While running it in 1440p with the RX 580 results in 48 frames per second average with a 40 frames per second minimum. However, you can run it at 66 FPS average with a 52 minimum when switched to 1080p, and the graphical preset is found to be at ultra when running on the One X. Overclocking the graphics card will yield better results for the 580. The last game we have is Assassin's Creed Origins. The game is found to be running at a dynamic 4K resolution, dropping as low as 1656p in the One X. Checking back with the RX 580, the game can only average at 26 FPS, with 22 being the minimum in native 4K resolution. In 1440p, it averages around 40 FPS with the minimum at 33. Another thing to note here is that the graphical settings are found to be mostly set to high in the One X, compared with ultra in the PC. Lowering the settings and adding an overclock to the 580 might eventually set the game to run at a locked 30 FPS at native 4K resolution, in contrast with the upscaled 4K as found in the One X. Thus, to conclude, the Xbox One X certainly puts up a brave fight, but I feel the RX 580 PC edges out eventually in the battle, even more so if you consider overclocking the card. And if I were to make a choice, I would certainly pick up the PC over the console. Like the video if you like it, and please consider subscribing to the channel and sharing the video. Dislike the video if you don't like it, and I would love to hear from you in the comments.